Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Avanti Wellness Podcast, hosted by me, Lydia Smith, aka Butterflydia. I'm embarking on my own transformational journey, and my intention is to inspire, inform, and support you all along the way. My hope is that we are all learning something new with each episode. So let's meet today's guest. Hi, everybody. This is Lydia. And today I'm excited to introduce you to our next guest. I'm sitting here today with Jessica Harrington. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, Lydia. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for coming on. So as all of my audience that listens to my podcast regularly knows, I like to introduce my guests by letting y'all know if I know them or if I don't know them. And today is a guest that I've never met before. So I'm going to get to know Jessica today along with you guys. So I actually connected, I'd say, with Jessica from a sister speakers networking group. And we're both in it. And she has a podcast, which she's going to tell y'all about later. And I just thought this would be a fun topic to talk about for my podcast audience. So today, we're going to talk about self-love and stress. And those are big topics that everybody has in their life, right? And so I want to go ahead and start off by letting Jessica introduce herself and maybe share where she's from and maybe some background so we feel like we know who we're talking with today. So go ahead, Jessica. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the introduction. So yes, my name is Jessica Harrington. I'm a master's in public health and my business is called Journey to Yourself. And so basically what I do is I am a stress management and self-love coach. So where the heck does it even get started? I started my education and career in the drug and alcohol field. And I realized a lot of patients were really stressed out about the day in, day out stuff, relationships, communication, jobs, things that everybody deals with. And as I was talking to my supervisor about this, I was really presented with, well, no matter what you do, everybody's going to come back. And then I had to really learn about burnout. So I had to learn the stressors in our life. I had to learn about burnout and I wanted to do something about it. I said, well, this can't just be the end all be all. That's just, we wipe our hands and that's just how life is. We have to be able to do something. So I decided to get my degree in my master's in public health. So I wanted to really focus on the prevention aspect of things. And so I worked in a couple of different populations with adults diagnosed with schizophrenia, children with in the special needs in the school system. And then I worked with the low income families. And so I really focused with them in the sense of creating this dental hygiene program. So I taught them about dental anxiety. So basically why the dentist wants to help you. How does the dentist help you? And then I also created a program for the parents on how are they talking to their kids about dental anxiety and how are they talking to their kids about dental health, right? And so then I left that last program, graduated with my master's in public health, and started my first business called Mindfulness Matters, where I solely worked with moms. I've been told they're pretty stressed out, so I solely just worked with them. And then I went through my own life transition, so I really had to practice what I preach and really focus on myself. And so after a couple of years of healing for myself, I then started my new business called Journey to Yourself, where I focus on creating habits for women on a one-on-one basis on coaching, but I also really work with employees as well in the corporation setting where I provide workshops or coaching as well.
That's neat. I love that name, Mindfulness Matters. Was that back then and you don't do that anymore? That was just a program.
Yeah. That was my first business. Yes.
Yeah. That's really I like that name. It was a good one. And then I totally can relate to the dental anxiety issue. I don't know. Do you have dental anxiety? Because I sure do.
I for sure did. And then when I got into it, I learned a little bit more. I'm not saying it's solely gone and I could just skip to the dentist, but
or be happy at the sound of that drill. I think that depends on like how sensitive people are. So if you've been injured because you felt the pain of that, that's where the anxiety comes from, not wanting to experience that pain again.
For sure. And then the families that I was working with, it was more of like, oh, well, if you eat more candy, I'm going to go tell the dentist to take your teeth out. So it was a different kind of families that I was working with as well. So it was more of how we're communicating and things like that. And Make sure we're setting up the tone.
Right.
First.
Like the stories that are told around the dentist, right? Like the myths or urban myths or whatever.
100%.
Yeah, that's neat. And so now you're working with corporations and employees and related to the mindfulness, or what was the
For burnout. So I would do one-on-one coaching, primarily women that are feeling overwhelmed, stressed. They wear multiple hats. But my other piece to my business is I work in corporations with their employees on a one-on-one basis or through workshops.
That's good. I mean, that's definitely why a lot of people either leave or get fired. It's because of overwork. Yeah. I was working for a startup and I didn't take like a full week off because we were only like 2 people and then maybe a few little employees. And so I was kind of like helping the owner. And so like I went like 2.5 years without more than 2 days off. And it really affected me, like, cause I never could unplug. I was always on. And so like, I don't want to do that again. It's not healthy and it doesn't help your, work life for sure.
It doesn't.
Pent up.
100%.
Yeah. So today we can talk a little bit about that, but our primarily topic is self-love and stress. And so you have some, thoughts and some habits that you like to express about stress. So what would you like to talk about next regarding stress or self-love?
Well, whatever you feel is comfortable. We can talk about what stress is. We could talk about some habits. We can go into self-love.
Yeah. Tell us what you see out there. I mean, because we know that there's a lot of stress in the world right now. I mean, inflation is high. That's one thing. Prices of things are going up. People's pockets aren't getting any thicker, that stresses people to think about the future. Right. And then there's just regular crazy stuff like pandemics, stress about walking out your door, thinking that some mist is going to jump in your mouth. And so you got to wear a mask. I mean, there's a lot of, there's some myths around that too, right? So let's talk about stress in general. Like, what are you dealing with right now with your clients?
Yeah. It's funny, a lot of people ask about how the pandemic, and things like that have affected my clients, but a lot of them still come in to me for the day in, day out stuff. They don't know how to communicate with their family members. They don't know how they're feeling burnt out. They feel like they can't unplug. They feel like they're always on call. They feel like they're always still running around for everybody else. They feel like they're short fused, so those things have always been around. Those reactions have not changed,
I know. I mean, I have my own, stressors in my life. And I actually found myself having a short fuse yesterday. But after I had the short fuse, I was just like so mad at myself because I just wish I had more patience, with dealing with, this particular situation. It requires a lot of patience on my part. And it's like, if my can is empty, you don't have patience, right? You got to learn how to refill your own tank. Right.
And you said it right there, when we have less patience, when we're tired, when we're overworked, when we're overwhelmed, right? But you said it perfectly. I have to refill my own can. And so I always make the analogy of we charge our laptops every night. We charge our cell phones every night. We fill our gas with gas tank. If you have oil in your house, you have to get that refilled, right? So we do these things because we're supposed to do them, but we have to do it for ourselves. And we don't think of it that way.
Right. I agree. So we'll talk about self-love after we talk about the stress. So we'll talk about the problem and then we'll talk about the self-love is the solution, right? So let's talk about your habits for dealing with stress. Like, how would you like to share with the audience what you usually like to share regarding your stressful habits?
Well, the first thing is like, what is stress? So first thing is stress is every single day. It's not something you can get rid of. It's how we perceive the stressor and how we have a relationship with stress. So stress is a reaction to change. So meaning literally it's going to happen every day and those buildups happen. So what are we doing with those things? The things that I really like to focus on are communication. How are you talking to yourself, but how are you talking to others, especially when a fight arises? Another one is practicing mindfulness. Meditation and yoga, they're so amazing, but there's a lot more to mindfulness than that. And of course, self-love, right? We could definitely get into that in a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, the stress that is there like different categories of stress? Like obviously there's mental stress, then there's physical stress, right? Like an ailing body, a physical stress, like stress fractures, things like that. That's physical stress. But mental stress is like a whole nother, category of stress. And then there's environmental stress. There's just so many, there's, your environment, like your home life, your work life, your city life, or your, country life. Like if all your cows got out or whatever, like there's stress everywhere. I live in the city, so I don't really know what the country stress life is like. I know it's probably less, but you've got copperheads and rattlesnakes. I mean, there's stress related to all kinds of things. So, there's just, is there one particular type of stress that you see more than others? Like, do people have more issues with mental stress than physical stress? Like, what would you say your experience is?
So stress, like I said, is a reaction to change, but we react 3 different ways. So the first symptom of stress is your physical. So that's your body. So that's your headaches, that's your migraines, that's the eye twitching, that's the dry mouth, the stomach flipping, the cramps, that whole 9 yards. That's usually a reaction to stress. You're talking about the mental stress, and that's again like that symptom of stress. So feeling anxious, feeling depression, isolation, short fused, right? That self-negative talk that we're saying to ourselves, usually reaction to stress, right? And then we have our behaviors. That's the Amazon shopping. That's, the chocolate eating. That's the ice cream eating. Or it's the opposite where I'm just so stressed, I can't even eat, right? The oversleeping or not sleeping. So they're going to have a few reactions to stress. So there's definitely a lot of ways that you're going to react. In the sense of different stressors, I mean, I always give the example of, I think we kind of talked about this off air, is we all have different perceptions. So we both could get in a car accident. I could be driving, you could be the passenger, we both be passengers, however you want to paint this picture, both get in a car accident. You're going to react one way and I'm going to react another way, right? I might have lost somebody to a car accident. This could be your first car accident, but it's all based on our past experiences, right? So we're all going to have a different reaction based on how we perceive the situation. So it's kind of figuring out how we're perceiving the situation, but that comes a lot with that mindfulness and that self-love aspect, because we're learning more about ourselves when we take that time for ourselves.
Absolutely. And actually, that's a great segue. So we can go from, we've identified the problems. There's problems all around us. There's stress all around us. We know that there needs to be things that we can do to manage, because it's not going away, right? It's not something you can completely go away with. So you really need the tools to manage it and to learn how to live with it, right? In a way that affects you in a positive way. So let's segue into what your suggested solutions are for dealing with all the stressors we've just identified in the world.
Yeah, for sure. So the first one I always like to talk about is communication. And I talk about communication in the sense of how we're talking to others. So we talked about burnout, we talked about significant others, things like that. I'm going to put the talking to yourself in the self-love category. So we're not going to talk about that piece just yet. But in the sense of how we're communicating with others. So there's a few things I always recommend. The first thing I say is avoid using the words always and never, especially when you're talking to somebody else, right? So you never listen to me. You're always too busy for me. When we start to speak that way, the other person has become defensive. And now we just become into this defensive battle. So they become defensive, I become defensive. And now we're at this point of we're just trying to win the argument. We're not even trying to resolve it, which leads to my next part is, are you trying to win the argument? Where you're talking about past things, you're trying to make them feel bad? Are you really just trying to resolve what is going on?
Right. That's good. And I've done a lot of workshops and stuff over the years. And I remember this one speaker talking about, in an argument, are you just trying to be right? Do you want to be right or do you want to be kind?
Oh, I like that one.
It's a good, I think that was Wayne Dyer. So it's just a good decision, like in an argument with someone like your spouse or your partner or whatever, someone you really care about, that you love, or your elderly mother or your, children, for instance. These are all people that really matter, in the world, that you don't want to ruin those relationships fully. Just to decide, would you prefer to be right and then dig your feet in, or do you want to just be kind? And that also leads to another quote that I've always found attractive is, people won't remember what you say, but they'll remember how they feel around you.
Well.
Yeah, I know. And I've always thought about that, because especially if I do something and I see that the person feels bad, maybe it wasn't even my intention, it wasn't conscious, but they are, feel bad, then, you feel bad. And, I try to clean it up right away by just saying, I'm sorry or apologize. But really, that's all you can do, once, if they don't want to accept your apology, that's on them, right? But you try to clean it up on your side, right?
You can take that accountability piece. Like I see that my words have caused this, or my actions have caused this, that's my accountability, it's my apology. But yeah, you kind of said a point too. We can't control other people's actions, right? So even though I might speak to you in a polite way, or maybe I might avoid these words always and never, that's on them, how they're perceiving the situation. It's up to me how I'm perceiving the situation, in the sense of, like I said, you gone to a couple workshops. Maybe the person that you are talking to hasn't gone to workshops and is able to see things in a different light. That's the way they've always seen that situation. So they don't know how to see it in a different perspective, right? So we're kind of stuck in that one habit.
Yeah. I'll say something else that I've learned is dealing with my parents. I used to have a feeling like they were older. They should have taught me better. They should have been better at communication than I was and taught it to me, because I became a better communicator than they were. And then I just kind of let that go, that somehow they were supposed to, and they didn't do it right. And just decided like, well, maybe, and I had a spiritual background, and I just thought, maybe God gave me this gift and I'm here to teach them. So It's not necessarily, what they did wrong, but the gift that I was given, I can teach them and discuss with them how their unhealthy dynamics not working, because they don't even know it. And so it was helpful, because when you're arguing like with a parent or something, and you're have a better pathway with communication and they're not, then instead of being angry that they can't be that person for you in this dynamic and relationship, maybe just recognize that maybe you're the one to change the dynamic in the family, that the parents didn't have the skill set to do it. And I had to let it go,
Yeah. And you said a couple of things like, they are communicating the way that they understood to communicate, based on their upbringing, based on their experiences in life. And you're going to do the same thing. You realize you don't like the way communication happens. So you want things to change. So you're speaking in a different way. And that's, again, taking that accountability piece. Like, I don't like how things are going. What action steps can I take on my end to make this change, make a change in my life?
Yeah, no, it's really helpful. And the cool part of that story is, it was 10 years later, my mom wrote me a letter and told me how much she appreciated like me not leaving her behind in the world, like that I helped to educate her, because she saw that it made our life better when she like had the space to, she had the space to say what she wanted to say. She didn't have to stay quiet. And then we learned how to work through whatever the challenge was, instead of just having to be like your words, your thoughts don't matter, and to let people know that their thoughts and their words do matter, and that everybody has a safe space to say what they need to say. But then that the love is the strong part that bridges the differences, right?
For
so
sure.
That's where the strength is. Is there anything else about where the phases of our conversation is that you want to share? Anything about that, or do you want to move on to the self-love component?
Well, yeah. So, yeah, we could definitely dive into the self-love for sure. And I think the biggest thing that, we're talking about right now is one, taking the accountability for sure, like how I feel, how I see the situation, but also giving the understanding that the other person might not see it your way. And I think just, giving that the grace and understanding with that, just how you would want somebody to do that. So for sure, I think that's beautiful how we said that.
Well, and that's a good word. I love that word grace, because it's almost like grace is not something you earn, right? It's something you give, right? And so like a lot of times maybe that person doesn't earn it, but you choose to be the kind of person that can give it, right? It's just a decision, right?
It is. It's that decision on yourself, right? And it's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to always be like, I don't want to say the bigger person. I feel like that's overused, but just doing, the nicer, kinder thing, giving, like you said, that grace.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful word. That word is just so beautiful. It's a high vibration word for sure.
For sure. Great.
Okay. So what is your little, well, not little, but what is your, share around, the self-love component? Cause that's we were going to talk about stress and self-love. So what's the self-love side of the wisdom that you like to share with people?
Yeah, of course. Of course. So my other piece to it, stress management, is self-love. So self-love is one of the 5 habits that I do talk about, in the sense of how are you talking to yourself? One of the biggest habits I talked about was communication with others, but it's also about a lot about how you're talking to yourself. And I know we kind of mentioned off air a couple of ways that people might have talked about themselves, but in the sense of, especially with social media going on right now, we're posting pictures about every little thing that we do, but then we take 5 pictures with a cup of coffee because we want it to just look just right. Or maybe we're on a family trip, right? So it's that. And we're so worried about how we're being perceived. We're like, oh, well, I don't look pretty in that picture, or I don't look too happy in that picture. Or even maybe when I'm talking to somebody about my vacation, I'm really making sure that I'm highlighting all the good stuff and I'm not telling them about the negative stuff, right? Because listen, you're with a group of family, there's going to be some drama, right? You're with other people, things happen. But why am I not telling these things? Because maybe it's like, well, I don't want them to think this of me. And I don't want, we're so, we get hyper focused on others' opinions about us when we really need to start focusing on what we feel about ourselves. A lot of times we're asking others to show up and show us love and buy me the flowers and be nice to me, but we're not doing it for ourselves. So if my suggestion always is there's 2 things. If you're asking it for somebody else, like I said, something so simple as buying me flowers, taking me out to dinner, talking nicely to me, are you doing it to yourself? Are you taking yourself out? Are you buying yourself flowers? And the other piece is, how are you talking to yourself, in the sense of when I look in the mirror every morning, how am I literally telling myself, oh, I look pretty. I love the way I'm dressed. I feel confident. I'm going to go conquer this interview today, all this stuff, right? So how am I actually talking to myself? Because those would be nice. But a lot of times we're usually tearing ourselves apart. Oh, I can't believe you picked this dress. Oh, you didn't even work out today. You should have drank more water. Your face looks dry. We start to really pull ourselves apart.
Yeah, and pick it out. I want to go back to your analogy of the person requiring that somebody else do something to them. What popped up for me is also the concept of the self-love that you have. So you're like, so someone's going, okay, you're not doing this and you're not doing that, and you're not getting me this anymore. And yes, they're not doing it to themselves, but I also want to go a little bit deeper and say, what is the person putting up with? That's an act of love or not self-love. If you're putting up with behavior that is not, what you want for yourself, and you're miserable, there's an act of self-love available for you to decide, is this situation, the best for me? Is it a contributor to the stress that you're feeling? Like there's another deeper level, because we can always just point the finger at, because there's an Alanis Morissette song. Do you know her, and you like her? Do you like her at all? Do you know her? Alanis Morissette?
I don't know the song reference.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, I just, the singer though, right?
Maybe, but I heard the
Oh,
song.
you don't know. Oh,
I'm
okay.
really bad with names, so
No,
I'm
it's
so
okay.
sorry.
Okay. Well, never mind. She's like sold the most records in, of the whole globe. But anyway, Alanis Morissette has a song and it's she sings it and it says the lyrics are like, I'm sorry to myself, so sorry to myself. And what she's talking about is she made all these records and stories and songs about how they didn't do this and they didn't do that. And then she got to like her third album and she realized that she was choosing those relationships. She was in that environment. Ultimately, when this is what I always tell people, when you're not happy with something that's happening in your life, you're responsible for it because you're choosing to be in that situation. But even so, people go, well, I can't leave my mother and my father, or I can't leave, my child, like these are major relationships you can't get out of. I always say, well, then you can change how you think about the relationship, because if you can't exit a situation for, like you can't divorce your sister, then you can decide how you choose to experience it. And really everything's kind of a mind message anyway, when you think about it. Everything
You,
kind of,
you really recapped a lot of things that we've been saying, right? Taking the accountability, speaking up. And when I was talking about like that self-love piece of like I said, you don't buy me flowers, you don't do this. And it's more of, well, if I'm not setting the standards that I require that, but I have to set them first. So I want flowers every week. So I'm going to buy myself flowers every week. I want to go out. So I'm going to take myself out. So I'm setting the standards. And I always bring it into the reference of, we all know that one person, we can't wear the shoes in their house, right? They just has to be clean. We know that person that we can't eat in their car. They don't like when you eat in their car, right? So we know these people that have these standards. We didn't kick them out of our life, but we respect those standards because they have set them. So when I talk about go do it for yourself, go set those standards, but you hold your own accountability for those standards. That's what I'm talking about in the sense of, going to do it for yourself, because it's like you said, it's really easy to point the fingers at somebody else saying, oh, well, you don't do this for me. You don't do this. Well, do you do it for yourself? Do you meet your own needs? And so really kind of setting those standards for yourself.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And that's important. Are there any other aspects that you talked about regarding self-love that you want to share with the audience?
I guess my second piece is, if you wouldn't, in the sense of self-love talk, if you wouldn't say it to your best friend, to someone you care or respect or love, don't say it to yourself.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't call somebody else, oh my gosh, my love handles are so big. You look like an idiot. Don't go out that dress. You wouldn't say that to your best friend. You wouldn't say that to your sister. So don't say it to yourself.
Some people might.
That's why I throw in the respect and care and love part. If you respect, love, and care them,
That's funny. Yeah, before we were recording, I was talking to Jessica and I was telling her that I had this concept where, and this is my personal opinion and it's my personal experience. So I'm just sharing, what I had come to understand is that, there are times when I'm really firm about self-love when it comes to standards, personal desires, like maybe when it comes to relationships, what you won't put up with and what you will put up with. And, like if someone's lying, that's like a deal breaker. Maybe it's not a deal breaker for some people because maybe they're lying too, and they know it, like, oh, we all lie. And that's how we justify it, but you can have a really strong ethic in one area of self-love and then not be self-loving in some other aspect of it. So it's not like this big balloon concept that a lot of times I'll hear people say, well, I love myself. And then it's just super clear to me by, maybe they're taking drugs or heroin or something. And they're saying, see, I love myself. And I'm like, no, you're taking heroin, you're doing something that's, bad for you. That's not really self-love to your body, So it's just conceptually, I feel like it can be, there's buckets, right? Buckets of self-love. Like you can always pick out an area, but I guess that's just a personal decision, right? Like if someone defines self-love as like overarching, and then they can do these other things, even though they could be harmful to themselves. And then they just say, well, I don't think that's harmful. It's just my choice or my habit. It's just, everything's such a personal, definition, isn't it? Like how we live our lives.
Oh, for sure. Like what makes me happy and what makes you happy are two different things, right? And we all have our vice too. We all have that one negative thing in our life. But I think you're really trying to say too, is that we're all working on something. We might have exceeded in this one area of our life, but we all have something we're working on. And kind of going back to that grace period with, we were all working on something because we were all growing from something. We all have these feelings. We all went through pain. We all went through a struggle, and we're all just trying to figure it out. Like you just named in the beginning, all the things that are happening in today's life. Nobody knows the answers for the future. We're all literally just trying to figure it out. And we just kind of give ourselves the grace, but other people the grace of, we're all here just trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure out what self-love means to me. What are the things that makes me happy today? Because next month I might not like yoga anymore, And so, and doing that's okay.
I know. Right? And like we're always evolving and we're always changing. And so there's so many factors that can, like something major could happen in your life. The loss of a loved one and you're grieving, like there's like everything's kind of out the door, when things shift in your environment, in your world. So I totally agree with you that it's like, it's not constant. It's constantly changing.
Yes.
I have a plaque, or it's actually a watercolor in my bedroom, and it has a butterfly and it says change is good. And it's just a reminder that change happens all the time and it can be good, because after the rain comes the rainbow, so.
Exactly.
Is there anything in wrapping up? Is there anything that you want to share? Let's talk about, okay, so how do people tell us how people find you, what you have available? I think you have some coaching and do you have a course or just coaching?
So I have no courses. I have free courses. I have 2 free courses, but yeah.
For your clients. Okay. And then like you share with the audience, like how they can connect with you, how they can find you. Anything you want to share, in wrapping up the podcast?
Yeah, of course. So, like I said, name is Jessica Harrington. You can find me on journeytoyourself.net. That's my website where I'll have all my breakdown of the different coaching I provide. You mentioned courses. I have a free resource page. So it's whether it's somebody that I, not affiliated with, but just somebody I highly recommend going to, maybe it's not something I can cover, but I do have free online courses for everyone as well. And then just on the social media platforms, it's Journey to Yourself 101.
Okay. And if anyone wants to hire you as a speaker, do you want to share with them how do you have a video or something they can find? Is it on your website?
It is. Yeah. So I have a speaker page as well. Same website, journeytoyourself.net. My email is jessica@journeytoyourself.net. But on the speaker page, yes, I have my demo reel. I have my testimonials from previous speaking engagements. I have my different topics I talk about for sure.
Okay, great. Well, I really, really appreciate you coming on today and sharing with the audience about self-love and all the stress that we're dealing with in the world and giving us some tools on how to manage that. So I just really appreciate it.
Appreciate you and taking the time out today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Hang on. Take care. We've reached the end of this episode. If you'd like to continue with this motivational journey, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss out each time we load a new episode. If you have an inspirational story to share or want to let us know about a potential guest, we'd love to hear about it. Contact us at avantiwellness.com. See you next time, and remember, change is good.